I'm a member of the regional council in Midtjylland, and then I'm running for office at the municipality of Aarhus and the region of Midtjylland again as well, or the central Denmark region. Besides that, I'm 36 years old. I work at Silkeborg municipality, where I work in daycare as a financial consultant, primarily in charge of building new institutions, rebuilding the existing ones, and finding like different solutions and writing policies for the municipality in Silkeborg. So that's what I do in my civil life. I live with my girlfriend and our French bulldog. We don't have any children yet, but he's our child for now. So yeah, and we live like right next to the city hall in Aarhus, so in the center of town. Really enjoy Aarhus. Moved to Aarhus in 2007 when I started studying there, and then never left. Really like the place. So, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about you and like telling you about our lovely city and like how our local politics system works, etc. So, yeah, that's a brief introduction at least.
Great. Then maybe the other Jakob.
So yeah, let's just open with some questions. Take it away. I know for sure that Kate has a lot of questions prepared.
But I'll let Judy have the floor. So I don't want to take up too much of the spotlight. So do you want to ask the first question, Judy?
Yeah, I mean, I just had about this meeting today. So I mean, the one thing that came to like my frontal lobe was about diversity and inclusivity, given that I have firsthand experience about diversity and inclusivity in Denmark, and also realizing that there is a lot of unconscious bias and implicit bias, especially towards people who look like me and who have non-Danish names, or probably wear, tokle, or perhaps look different. And there's always that I have, in my experience, job searching experiencing, which has been really frustrating, and a reason why I decided to sort of take a pause and look at things from a broader perspective was to also understand what, if there are any policies or active role that perhaps the government, maybe on a communal level or a higher level, is doing to implement sort of a policy within organizations that, because given that we are required to have pictures, for example, on our CVs in Denmark, and that's something that doesn't happen in many other countries, and how that plays upon with implicit bias. If there could be, going into the future, a rule that says that one should not perhaps be discriminated by the first contact that someone gets from their picture.
Well, first of all, thank you. I think that's a very good question, and it's a vast subject that I don't think that we can cover in one evening, and it's something that has like a lot of different opinions. I agree with you that unfortunately in Denmark, the way that politicians and the way that people with public opinions communicate about like different ethnicities or different religions is harmful for the way that we interact with each other. Unfortunately, this is not only a Danish problem. I think it's a global problem. In my own opinion and in my party's opinion, I represent Liberal Alliance. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, which is a libertarian party. So we regard ourselves as global libertarians, and therefore we don't want to discriminate. We want to treat everybody equal. It's not. I think one of the things that you need to be very conscious about is the fact that you don't make affirmative action laws in order to overcome some of these differences. Like, you need to be able to have laws that are equal for all and apply to all. But then again, you also need to, that's the legislative part of it. But then again, you also need to communicate in a respectful manner to each other. So you need to be open about some of the issues that are there, because in Denmark, for instance, due to the fact that some of the people with a different ethnicity than Danish that are here as refugees or second or third generation refugees, and therefore some of their circumstances in life have been more difficult than others, and therefore we have a higher degree of unemployment among this group than we have amongst the Danish. My vocabulary is running out. But it's therefore we need to address how we level the playing field and how we make sure that we overcome some of these differences and how we get everybody into employment. Because in my opinion and in my party's opinion, I think that our labor market is one of the best ways to integrate and understand each other in order to communicate between different groups, ethnic, religious, or whatever. So yeah, I think that in part answer your question, or is there a part of it that I didn't address?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's just that it seems that for every one step taken, there is another part of, because right now there's a very anti-immigrant like narrative. So for every one step taken towards, inclusivity and diversity, then comes, another political play that sort of trails it back. And that can feel like as much as Denmark is making progress, there's also in other parts where it's retrogressing.
I think one of the problems is that in Denmark and other countries as well, sometimes ethnicity is used as a scapegoat. So when you don't want to address the real problem, with unemployment or the fact that people have chosen to live in certain areas which have created problems in those areas due to the fact that they are unemployed and they are bored and things like that. Sometimes it's just easier to point out that they look different, they are different from the majority, and therefore that becomes the narrative rather than the actual problem, which in my opinion is the fact that we have certain areas where people are less educated and are less employed. So that's what we need to address in that manner.
Thank you.
Can I maybe ask a question regarding that as well, if that's okay? But I thought that would fit in. I'm just curious about, Jakob, how you look upon people that come, internationals that come to Denmark that are highly educated, and then they end up having unskilled jobs. What are your party's opinion about that? Should we guide them to get a job within with their qualifications in use, or should they just take whatever job that's available?
Well, obviously we should use people with the skills that they have, the educations that they have. Sometimes educations can be difficult to compare between countries. There are different standards from country to country. So sometimes it would be necessary that you have additional tests, or there can be a language barrier. In my personal opinion, I think that we should be able to communicate in English much more than we are. I don't think that we necessarily need to have requirements about always using Danish as our primary language. So in that aspect, if that overcomes some of the barriers, then we should look into that. There are national conservative parties who are very focused on the fact that you need to be able to speak proper Danish and that you need to be able to communicate only in Danish. I think sometimes you could give people the choice. Am I comfortable having this conversation with a person in a foreign language? And thereby we could use some of the resources that come into the country in a better way than we are. So we should be thankful for anybody who comes here with an education, comes here with a willingness to work, and we should do whatever we can to integrate them into our society and to make sure that our labor market is ready to also include them into the workforce.
I actually have a follow-up question regarding to have this continue this conversation. It's actually 2 questions, but I'll start with one and continue on from there. Because as I mentioned earlier, with my business, it's based on my own personal experiences. I help internationals in landing a job, and I've had more than 5 jobs in 4.5 years. And they were in English, and I was very fortunate that I could be able to work in English. But I know with a lot of internationals who might not live in an international city, there are companies, that is a huge problem with a lot of universities that they have the challenge with, especially when it comes to helping and finding internships for international students, for those with their studies. A lot of companies are not open to have internationals as either interns or hiring them in general because their Danish is not good enough. So I guess that would be my question would be to you is like regarding in the since we're talking about the Aarhus municipality, right? We can't talk for all of Denmark here. What do you think that your party can do to help companies become more open-minded to have internationals in within various positions, and to help them become more open-minded in the way where because internationals, as I see it, like we can definitely bring value to Denmark because there is a lack of labor force in general. And so, yeah, and I guess that would be the question is that to you is simply put, what do you think your party would be able to do to help companies become more open-minded, and how would you be able to communicate that across the commune, for example?
Well, first of all, like I think it's important for the companies to have the willingness by themselves to be bilingual or to choose English as their main language, or however they want to organize themselves. But one of the things that we can do as a municipality is that we can be able to talk about the positive things about attracting foreigners to our city. So that might also be that some in the public organizations in that we also have all of the communication there available in English as well as in Danish, for instance. I don't think that we shouldn't broaden it out so that we use every language out there, but English is the second language for most Danes, and then German comes third. So therefore, it would be natural to first attract people who are English speaking, and then you can move on from there. But I think that the main reason is to talk about it in a positive way, do whatever you can as a city to attract foreign labor, and then the companies, they will see the attractiveness of the new workforce that has come in, and they will apply it that way. So I don't believe in government trying to force something upon the different companies in that sense.
No, it's not what I meant either. It was just more about being able to communicate that and helping, and the way to, like, there's a saying in American English, right, that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right? So it's more about it's more about the idea of leading them, to that way. But in the end, it's their decision, right? And it leads to my next question, and then I'll give the floor to Judy, I promise. So one of the things that I do is, or within my company, is I help a lot of international students, and surprisingly, a lot of international students around the country, and especially in Aarhus, hire me to help them land an internship or to help them in landing positions. And it has led to a lot of success so far with my methods. But a lot of what the issue is that there, as you've probably heard, is that there's a lot of the students in general are they take the education here, they try to find something, they can't, and then they're forced to leave. And then the current government is currently saying, look, well, your internationals are taking the education, and we're paying for it, and they're leaving the country. So why should we continue to have these international or English degrees? And that's led to the cost deduction of these programs, which is also costing jobs in Denmark. From what I'm hearing from academies and universities, is that that's the side effect, is that also it's not only affecting internationals, but also Danes and them losing their job, and especially during the COVID, it's not really promising. So, and with my experience working with international students, they really do try. They really make the effort. And it's not like they make the plan to come to Denmark and saying, oh, I'm going to take this education and go back. No, they really do want to stay here. They just really have a terrible time. And from what I'm hearing, the career services are not up to their expectations, which I know is not what the community does. But that's where my question is, to you, is that, like, what would the community be able to do to help the international students studying within the Aarhus educational institutions in the area to land positions quickly after graduation? Because in my opinion, I don't think it makes sense where students feel that they have no other option but to hire me because they're not able to have an internship or be able to land their first position, right? So there is something, I think, lacking of communication of some sort, but I'm hoping that I'm really interested to hear your answer regarding my question. So,
and it is a brilliant question. I think that one of the things that we need to learn to appreciate more is that when foreigners come to Denmark to study, or when we go abroad to study or to work, we learn from each other, and that is how we develop, like, the way that we do things. Otherwise, you'd always just be doing the things the same way that you have been doing for the last few decades. So you need to be able to talk about the positive things about having a diverse workforce and having people from different backgrounds, different countries, different cultures, and like how they contribute together in order to form something new. Regarding like career management and how to guide people better, like, we actually do some of that through the municipality, but only when we have two different systems. So we have one where we insure ourselves, and then we have one once you've fallen out of the insurance system. And the municipality runs the one where you have fallen out of the insurance system.
The A-Kassa, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that some of the A-Kassa are better than others at helping foreigners. I also think that it depends on what type of education you have had, how many companies are used to hiring English-speaking labor, etc. So, but I think that it's about, for me and for my party, it's often about how do we create the most, like, the lowest level of unemployment in the private sector, because by doing that you'd also create more internships, you create more jobs, and one of the ways that we tend to do, or what we propose to do, but that's on a national scale. You can do it a bit in the municipality as well, but that by lowering taxes and lowering some of the trade restrictions that go out of the country, so that you thereby empower some of the private companies a bit more. So, but yeah, in general, creating a larger demand in the private sector for labor is the best way to create internships and to create jobs for foreigners as well. So the best possible, what could you call it, like entrepreneurial environment, that's one of the things that you can help as a municipality. How do you help startups? Like, how do you reduce the amount of bureaucracy in the process of creating a startup? how do you lower some of the tax burdens that are placed on companies in order for the companies to be able to invest more in their own company and thereby in their own labor force?
I don't want to keep, I don't know, I would have many questions, follow-ups, but I don't want to take the spotlight. So Judy, do you have any questions? So.
Yeah, I mean, it's still on that same line of retention, because I feel like when Denmark loses international students who've come and, spent 4 years, 5 years here, then studied, and then perhaps get frustrated by the ever shifting goalpost of, immigration and residency rules, that it's quite a loss, because then these students could have easily been absorbed into, the job market. And so it's a question of how can the government, whether on a regional or a municipality level, strengthen this collaboration between companies and the education system, so that they can retain students and so that international students are not leaving?
Well, I think that again, like it's one of the difficult questions, because it isn't really a job for the municipality per se. I think that the universities, for instance, they should do a better job of letting private companies come into the education program, like having case studies or competitions in that way, so that you form a relationship during the education with different companies. And you can always encourage that, and you can probably, one of the ways that you could do it on a national scale would be if you made some sort of tax benefit by that form of engagement, but you wouldn't be able to do that from either the region or the municipality in that manner. We don't have any legislative power, and what we have of tax regulation tools are fairly limited. But again, like, you can make fairs, you can try to create a open environment. I also think that one of the things that are difficult. I spent some time abroad as well. Like I lived in South Africa for a year and a half, and I lived in America for a bit. Sometimes when you're there for a limited period of time, and people know that you're there for a limited period of time, at least from the get-go, that is limiting social relations. Like, people, they don't form as strong relations between groups when they anticipate people leaving. So therefore, I think often that it's important to send a signal that anybody who has employment in Denmark, and anybody who is capable of taking care of themselves, are always welcome to stay, so that you don't have a time limit, you don't have a time frame on the end of your education and that matter.
I actually would like to go back to the question about taxes, because what's really interesting, especially for myself as an American living in Denmark, I actually love paying my high taxes in Denmark, to be quite frank with you, because of the many benefits that it provides to its citizens, and especially even to myself. I mean, for example, Danish language courses. Also, like my husband, who is Danish, his family has muscular dystrophy. And without the taxes, they would not be able to get the help that they need. For example, the wheelchairs, having a handicapped helper, etc., to be able to have a good life here. It's like, actually, Denmark is one of the best countries in the world to be disabled, in my opinion. And I'm curious to know, like, what policies, maybe this is also about my lack of the Danish tax system as well. So please correct me and help me, be more informed about this, about what policies you would like to change regarding local tax benefits.
So regarding local taxes, I think that it's important to state that the primary goal for us at the moment is that we don't have any raises in taxes. Like, the municipality of Aarhus, they have quite a bit of debt. It's been tripled over the past 10 years. So therefore, it's unlikely that we'll be able to lower taxes significantly during the next period or two. So therefore, at the moment, we would be fighting for having steady taxes and then paying off some of the debt, so that we in turn, once we release some money, can use that to have tax reductions. We don't have any ambition of lowering some of the services that we have. We have an ambition of lowering the bureaucracy that is followed by it. We have an ambition of lowering some of the nannying that the state also does. Sometimes the negative side, the flip side of the coin of having all of these benefits and having them paid for by common means is that some political parties, they have a tendency to want to control people's lives, and that is one of the things that we would like to root out. In that sense, people should be able to make their own choices, and so we'd like to focus on the primary objectives of the healthcare system, of the daycare system, of taking care of the elderly, taking care of the disabled, but then cutting away some of the more unnecessary things where we try to regulate people too much, and that will free up quite a bit of money, and that money could be used as reducing debt and later on reducing taxes. When we talk about lowering taxes, we're not talking about having no taxes. We're talking about flat tax of 40%, which is still quite a bit in comparison to a lot of other countries, America included. We also have one of the highest VATs in the world. We have VAT of 25%. So that would, when you have that, and that's very expensive to change. And it's also something that tourists are contributing to, etc. So it might not be the best place to start. One of the places that you could do it is that you could reduce it for specific sectors. For instance, you could reduce it for bars, you could reduce it for restaurants, for hotels, so that you could make Denmark more attractive for foreigners to come visit, and hopefully if they have a pleasant stay, that they want to come educate themselves here, or they want to come live here and work here. So that's one of the things that you could do. You could also not have a tax of 150% on cars. Like that's another. You compare the price of a Dutch Charger in Detroit and over here, then you're terrified. So yeah.
Yep. Do you have any questions, Judy? I can totally keep going, but so.
No, I mean, it was quite a short notice, so I didn't have so many questions prepared. So I'm okay also listening.
Okay, then I'll just keep going, and if you have something, Judy, just please interrupt me like anytime. So again, I want to go back to my small business. Because having a business is important to me, but also it's important to me to keep it afloat. I was actually very unfortunate where I registered in March, and then of last year, and then a few weeks, then COVID hit. And honestly, I've been very fortunate with my company, and it's been doing quite okay. But as far as everyone else's COVID situation has hit a lot of small businesses. And my question is, what policies would you put in place to help small businesses in Aarhus area to help get them back off their feet again after the COVID crisis, or even during for the COVID crisis, because how long that's going to go on, right? So
I think that's one of the difficult questions, and it's especially coming from Detroit area, where you realize what happened to the automotive industry and the bailout that Obama made back in the day. I think that's very comparable to what the Danish government is trying to do to business owners at the moment, with all of the care packages, as they're called. I think that you should probably have chosen a different strategy from the beginning, but once we have chosen this path, I think it's very important that we keep compensating business owners until the end. Otherwise, all of the money that we spend compensating companies to survive, that would have been wasted. So it's difficult for me to answer objectively, because I think that from the beginning you could have done it differently. But once you have chosen this path, you need to carry it through. Then once everything gets started, I think that it's important to look at which industries have been hit the hardest. Like, for instance, I mentioned before, restaurant, bars, cafes. I think that those are extremely important for the quality of life in a city. Like, it's one of the things that I enjoy the most about Aarhus is our growing food scene, like our restaurants. We have brilliant restaurants, we have good food, we have good products. So and they've really been hit hard during this COVID crisis, and a lot of them are small business owners. So whatever we can do to lighten the burden for them, for instance, by lowering taxes from serving outside, from perhaps pressuring national government to lower the VAT for half a year, for a year, so that people can get back on their feet. And some of those levers should be used for other businesses as well. Like, if we can lower taxes for a short period of time, so that people can regain some of what they've lost, but they do it through their own commitment to their company, then that would be the right approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, that actually leads to another follow-up question, especially since we're talking about cafes and bars that have been really hit. Let's take, for example, some companies like let's take a few examples. Wolt and Just Eat, who mainly take like a huge cut, and in my opinion, that's why. Well, it's a lot of things, right? It's not just like the whole COVID situation, but then not only is there the COVID and then being shut down, etc. You also have these other companies that are taking huge cuts from other restaurants. And for example, there's a restaurant that I go for takeout quite often actually, and they give an incentive to give a discount for those meals to get people to pick up, because they want people to make the incentive to pick up their food and give that discount, because that discount is what's saving them compared to like and then making that incentive instead of using like Wolt or Just Eat, for example. Would it be like, this is a national level and not a municipality level, but do you think your party would be open or consider being able to regulate these type of companies so that then they don't hurt these type of small businesses, or what would be your what your party's opinion would be on this?
Well, my party's opinion and my own opinion on that question would be no. We shouldn't regulate them. I think that what is necessary is a deeper competition. Like, you need more companies who engage in this, and then when they engage in this, they will bring down the delivery costs for the different companies. So I think that's the right way to go. If they are too aggressive in the way that they do it, some restaurants, they also choose to deliver themselves. Some restaurants, they have differentiated prices. So instead of offering a discount in the restaurant, they have upped their prices on, for instance. And I think that's perfectly natural. I think that it's reasonable that we pay something extra for the delivery. How they control their businesses, how they choose to conduct themselves, that is their own business. I think that if we make the market liberal enough, open enough, so that we have a significant amount of different competitors in the market, I think that will lower the prices by itself, and you don't have to regulate it.
Okay. So going to a completely different topic altogether. So I was thinking about my own newborn son today, because yesterday he had his second vaccine, and he's been uncomfortable the last few days with it. But the reason why a vaccine is so that then he doesn't get mumps and measles and all the terrible diseases that you can get that can be solved by just having a vaccine, right? And that's the small price of just having a few days of uncomfort then. And having this. But there are people in Denmark who decide not to vaccinate, and this is a huge debate as of now. But like, if we talk about a few years ago, there were I believe it was in southern Denmark, where there was some outbreaks. I believe it was measles or mumps, one of them. I can't quite remember at the top of my head. but and I know in Denmark that it is focused on more about the freedom of choice to do so, but then you have the results of having these outbreaks. But let's take the example of the United States. What the United States does to kind of give that incentive to get people to vaccinate is that you have to vaccinate your child to go to public school. But then that's one of the reasons why in the United States you have to why people feel the need to homeschool or to put their children in private school, so that then they don't vaccinate their child. And so my question to you is, does your party believe in the right to choose, or do you believe that like vaccinations must be mandatory to help keep the public safe, for example?
Well, I definitely believe that you should have the right to choose, but I also believe that all public schools, all public institutions should have the right to make demands to the people who use them. So, for instance, like that the daycare should be allowed to refuse to have somebody attend if they are not vaccinated because they pose a risk to others. I think one of the important things to understand when you talk about choice is that your choice is not to harm others, and it's not to reduce other people's freedom as well. So if you make that choice has consequences. You're free to make it, but then that also includes, for instance, that you'd have to choose private school or you have to choose homeschooling, which is allowed in Denmark, like by law. You can do that if you want.
Yeah, and that actually leads to my question regarding the COVID vaccination, right? Because as we've heard a few days ago, or that now there's this new plan that has been rolled out for the next weeks of how things will be slowly reopening up. And as you know, there's with the going to a cafe or to a hairdresser or whatever, you have to have these Corona passports, I think they're called, where you have to choose to either show that you have been vaccinated, or to show within the last 3 days that you have that you've taken the COVID test and that you're tested negative. So do you think that that's in breaches this idea of choice, where you're only given these two choices, or do you think that this plan, you mentioned that you were not happy with the plan, so as of now, so correct me if I misunderstood, but I'm curious on what your opinion, or what your party's opinion is regarding this, especially with this idea of choice, or vaccination choice for that matter.
Well, I would have preferred if you had chosen to let the different companies, let the hairdressers, let the cafes choose whether they wanted to enforce that or not. Like, I think sometimes you violate the privacy of people's companies when you regulate too much, when you enforce something like that, and the passport as well. I understand why they choose to do it, in order to maintain low incidence numbers at the moment. But and I'm okay with they enforcing it onto me, because I really just want to be able to go out, have a meal, have a beer, and just enjoy social life again. So if that's the price that I have to,
you and me both.
right? But I understand some of the cafes, restaurants where they have distance restrictions inside. They have it's mandatory to wear masks. It's mandatory to have small companies of people, small parties of people. I think that if you enforce the passport, then you should lift some of the other restrictions. If you have the other restrictions, then you should have made the passport voluntary for the companies, whether they wanted to enforce that or not, and then they could have signaled it outside. And then it could also have been a competitive parameter. Like, people could have chosen, I want to go in there because they use the passport. I feel more safe going in there, or I can go in here because they don't require me to use a passport to get in. So that would have been my compromise if I had been able to choose. But on a personal level, yeah, I'm okay as long as I can come out and enjoy a good meal. So.
Do you have any questions, Judy? I feel bad that I'm just taking all these questions. No, I know that I prepared and you were last minute, but I want to give you the floor if you have something. So.
No, I mean, like when I think about, I think for the 7 years now that I've been in Denmark, I have seen the narrative keeps changing. Like every government, when I came in 2013, the government was we call it like immigrant friendly. There wasn't so much of the DF, and then came DF, and then new rules came out, and nobody feels the heat of every government than immigrants, because certain things really change and we feel it more. Like when I came in, I remember we needed to have a deposit of 50,000 Danish kroner guarantee in our bank konto, and then now the next government DF came up, and then it was 100,000, and many other rules that most foreigners felt, especially non-EU foreigners. And then now there's this other government, and the rules again have changed. And one of the things that I keep hearing, and especially going back to the issue of retention, and a lot of the students finding themselves on a very tricky place, and especially now with Corona, there are many people, and some whom I know personally, who have had to, even though they applied and were accepted into schools, they've now received a letter that they have to leave Denmark. And at this time, it's because Siri was closed and everything was just chaotic, and probably people are not checking mails, within Siri as they should. But then it comes back to the foreigners that, well, it's upon you that you should have, there is a breakdown. And so my question is always that who is the gatekeeper? Where is the person who can stand in, or the party or rules that can come in place that protect a lot of these foreigners from non-EU countries who have done everything by the book, probably for 5 years, and now they want to move a step ahead, maybe have gotten a new job or probably want another education, only to find them, being told, no, you have to leave Denmark within 20 days. And sometimes it's such a crisis because someone feels, I have done everything, but it's never enough. The goalpost is always moving. And I know with Liberal, Alliance, you're more about, freedom, but it seems like this freedom is conditional, as Anna's, I can't remember his party, but there's this politician who is all about kærlighed uden grænser, because it seems that everything is okay except if you're from a certain region. And is there any way possible that there can be rules or policies that could ensure, because in some way this feels like a humanitarian crisis when people's rights are trampled on by laws that are so ambiguous and that keep changing all the time?
I would like to add to Judy, actually, because I am married to a Dane, and I do have a small child. And it is always a fear for myself that I will one day be deported with me and my son out of the United States, or that we have to go somewhere. Because Judy is right, it changes all the time. But even though I am married to a Dane and I pay my taxes and so on, there is no guarantee that because I'm married to a Dane does not mean that I can stay here. And it is something that I am scared of every day, that I am going to be separated from my son, that I will be deported and my son stays, or that both of us. And then we have to find a way to, and it's a fear of like this, what happens is this idea of separating families. And I just wanted to add my story to that, to Judy's question. So.
Well, I thank you both for the questions. I wish that there was a simple answer, but the most simple answer is that more people should be should cast their vote in a direction that doesn't make more restrictions on immigration. So that's a difficult task at the moment, because every party seems to be competing to be the most strict when it comes to immigration. So I think that, and everybody hates legislation like the 24-year-old rule where you aren't allowed to be with your lover if the person that you are with is younger than 25 or 24 years of age, for instance. And also some of the, when you talked about, Kate, that you're scared of being deported, I don't think that anybody should ever be scared of being deported if they are, well, first of all, if you're married to a Dane and the Dane has the right to be in Denmark, you should have the right to be in Denmark as well. But also, as you said, paying your taxes, if your husband is paying his taxes as well. And also, always, if the person who has the strongest relationship to Denmark is a Danish citizen, is willing to sign that they will cover the costs of having the other person in the country, you should always be allowed to be here. We as a party, we used to use the phrase that we should have open borders but closed caskets. So we should not be paying for anybody. Everybody that were able to pay for themselves should be welcome. And I still think that should be a guideline that we should use in that aspect, that as long as you're able to provide for yourself and for your family, so that it doesn't have to be every single individual that provides for themselves, but as long as you as a family provide for yourself, then you should be allowed to stay. And that isn't something that should change overnight.
I have actually another question that I think is quite important since we're running out of time. There's I'm not sure, but I was reading in the Danish newspaper about a few weeks ago, actually, of these Danish citizen children that are currently in migrant centers in Syria, whose parents joined ISIS, or they're Danish citizens that have decided to join ISIS. And now they're in detention centers or have been taken prisoner, and they took their children with them. And Denmark is not taking these Danish children back. And other EU countries like Belgium have done so. And I know that the current government's position on this is that they don't want to take these children back because they don't want to separate these children from the mothers, and this is just my opinion, that I don't think anyone is arguing that these parents should be prosecuted, but the children should not be suffering, and they can come back to Denmark and be prosecuted, and because of the longer that they stay in, and there's been a study that has been shown that has just been recently published. I forgot the name of the study, that the longer that these children stay in these migrant camps with these parents who have converted to radical Islam, the more likely that they will become radical Islamists themselves, and that it's the best interest that they are taken back to help these children who have been psychologically damaged. And in your opinion, in your party's opinion, do you agree with the current Danish government's policy in not taking these children back in Denmark so that they're not separated from their parents, or do you differ from their opinion, and if so, why?
So I and my party, we've been looking into a way to use the method that has been used in France, where you can take home the children but not the mothers. And I think that should be the right way to go. If that is not possible, then you should also bring home the mothers and then prosecute them in Denmark. So, of course, you need to bring home the children. Children are individuals in their own right, so they should not be punished for the actions of their mothers.
Okay. So going back to Aarhus, so there's an interesting situation that's been in Aarhus for a long time, and that's in Klostertor, where there is a homeless shelter there, and I see a lot of homeless people there who are either drug addicts, etc. And the difference between the United States and Denmark is that, at least as I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, but at least in Denmark they would be able to get the help that they need, whereas in the United States, in my opinion, a lot of people become homeless because of situations, either becoming unemployed, and it's not necessarily only because of drug use or mental instability, etc. It's because they genuinely are on hard luck, so to say. And so I'm curious on what your stance would be, or what your plan is in helping the homeless people within the Aarhus area.
Again, it's an extremely difficult question because I don't believe that there are anybody in Denmark who are homeless if they're not homeless in part by choice. Because the municipality would always help them to have some money. They would always help them to have a place to stay. Then they can make choices so that they can reduce their monthly expenses by not having that apartment or not using it, and thereby choosing to live on the streets. Those people are more difficult to help. I think sometimes some of the more ridiculous solutions that I've heard is that some political parties, they try to create centers outside of town where they can help them create apartments out there and create an environment where they believe that they want to stay. I don't believe that is possible. I think that people who choose to live on the streets, they also want social contact. They also want to be part of the vibe that is inside of the city center. So I think one of the best ways that we can help them is that we can help them have shelters inside city center. We can help them have rooms where they can have syringes, etc., for their addictions, for instance, so that they don't get unnecessarily ill if they have to use narcotics. So I think that in that manner you can help them. You need to help people to not harm themselves unnecessarily, and then when they choose to come out of their addiction, whether being alcohol or narcotics, then we can help them. We should not force upon them that we want them out of something in that manner. I also think that it should not be a criminal offense to be carrying narcotics for their own use in that aspect. So it's I think sometimes I think in that aspect we need to look to Portugal, for instance, where they don't criminalize people who have drug addictions, but you help them. You create sterile environments where they can use their drugs. And then once that they are willing to try to let go of their addiction, then you help them to get rid of it. I think that's the right approach. I don't think that you can send them to a farm outside of Aarhus and then have them live there, and then you shelter, so you can't see them and they're gone. So yeah.
Do you want to give the last question, Judy? Otherwise, I'll ask my question, but I want to give you the chance to do so. So
I think Louise has had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see. My bad.
No worries. I was just I wanted to go back to the local taxes, Jakob, where I know that you differ from quite a lot of parties, and I'm curious with not wanting to raise the local taxes and the staffing in the daycare system. How do you think that corresponds? Because the staffing is decided that it should go up from the government, and then we need the money to do so.
But you also receive the money from the government in order to do so. I have an unfair advantage here due to the fact that I actually work with daycare, like as a government official as well. But you in Aarhus you receive enough to actually meet the requirements, especially if you want to follow the national standard, so that you regard people like the youngest group of people as being 0 to 2 year olds, and then the oldest group of people in daycare from 3 to 5 year olds or 6 year olds. In Aarhus, Thomas Medom has a tendency that he wants to regard the youngest as being 0 to 3, and then the rest from being 3 to 6. And thereby it becomes much more expensive to reach the national requirements and actually supersede the national requirements. I think that as a start, we should just reach the national requirements, having the same standards as every other municipality, so that we use the 0 to 2 and then 2 to 3 to 5. And then also due to the fact that you don't have enough educated staff to fill into these daycare centers. That's another problem. You can fill all of the money that you want into the daycare system, but if you don't have any personnel to hire, you won't actually lower the ratio between staff and children. And again, like you often use a lot of money on administration, Aarhus especially, So you could lower some of the cost from administration. You don't have to raise taxes. Raising municipality taxes is also often not very good for actually the public service that you can provide, because most of what you gain from that you have to hand into to the state government as well.
So Kate, you had one last question because time's up.
Yeah, I'll try to be as quick as possible. So about a month ago, there was a story I was reading that actually I read it first as a Facebook post, and then it became published and has got some attention. There was this last year. There was this PhD. She was a Chinese student. She was going to do her thesis, defend her thesis, etc. But then her visa was running out, and this is from the University of Copenhagen. She reached out to them to get to help them, and no response. And then her visa ran out, and she didn't go back to China. So then she was sent to a detention center that was outside of Copenhagen, and she's experienced not only racism but atrocities that I myself am terrified of, and that I'm hearing the story made me realize this is not only happening to internationals who are highly educated, that this is also happening to refugees and to other that this could happen to anyone, and that's what was the terrifying point. I mean, yes, maybe there was some issue with this. This is a more of a national question, not so much of a communal one. But in your party's I'm curious to know, like, in your party's opinion, what do you think? It's hard to say depending on how much you know of the story. What preventive measures could be set forth to make sure that this either for one, that this doesn't happen again, and two, like, what measures can be done so that then it's not only refugees or illegals or internationals for that matter, that it's not so much of the, in my opinion, it's not so much the problem of being a detention center. It's what she's experienced and the abuse that this woman has went through. And so I'm curious to know, like, what the party's opinion would be on this matter, and to help, either so that it doesn't happen again, or to make it in a way so that control these detention centers in some way so that they're not breaching human rights. So.
Well, first of all, the sound cut out in the middle a little bit, so I'm not certain that I got everything, and I apologize for that in advance. I'm not familiar with the specific story, and can't go into that, but
no,
I think that it's important that obviously when you have somebody in a detention center or in a prison, like, when the government is responsible for those people's lives and for their well-being, it is important that that you live up to that responsibility. Like, it's one of the worst things that you can do. You can incarcerate people, you can hold people back, and you deprive people of their own rights by doing that. And when you do that, you actually put those rights onto yourself, and thereby you carry a large responsibility for the people that you have there. So if there are racism, if there are things that are in violation with human rights, if there are violations to people's individual rights in that aspect, then the people who do that and the system that does that should be prosecuted for the mistakes that they make.
Definitely.
Is that the last word for tonight? It's 9:05.
Yeah, do you have anything, Judy?
No, thank you, Jakob. We've really put you on the spot this evening. Thank you.
I really enjoyed. Thank you so much for very qualified and good questions. So I enjoyed answering them, and I hope that my answers have helped you to gain some insight into where my party stands and, like, politics in Denmark in general. And I need to I need to praise you, Judy, for the way that you pronounce all of our very tricky letters, like you mentioned Udlændinge. So every time that we add one of our 3 extra letters, like that must be madness coming coming as a foreigner and having to learn how to pronounce those. So you did very well.
Thank you.
And I have one last question for Kate.
Mm.
So
Yes.
the Matthew Stafford Jared Goff trade.
I'm sorry.
The Matthew Stafford Jared Goff trade, was that a good thing?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
The Detroit Lions, they traded their quarterback.
Oh, honestly, I don't follow sports, and I honestly don't care. Only basketball is what matters, is the Pistons, and that's all I have on that. But no, Tigers and everything. Oh, I'm the worst person to ask about that. So, but thank you for the question and putting me in the spotlight. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Now, yeah, thank you so much, all 3 of you participating and spending an hour with us. We really appreciate it
Yes.
a lot.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much, and and good, and wishing you all the best, Jakob, with the election, and good luck to you.
Mm.
Thank you. And remember to vote. No matter what, like who you vote for, vote for somebody who doesn't make rules more difficult for immigration.
Oh no, I definitely count on that for sure. So thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. See you.